Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick video, Core Pick live stream for today, June 8th. Getting ahead of myself here a little bit. So in this video, if you're brand new to what I do in these videos, typically go through a recap of yesterday's picks, see how they turned out, talk a little bit about the weather impacting the slate overall, then go over to FanDuel and talk about my core picks and go to my cheat sheet, which is up on the YouTube community tab. It's up on Facebook. It's up on Twitter, and talk about the top GPP teams to stack. It's a smaller 5-game slate today, so I'm going to be taking a look a little bit more at the slate in totality. So I'm going to be doing a recap today. We'll go over to the top, or we'll go over to weather, then we'll go over to top stacks, and then we'll go over to FanDuel and talk a little bit more about the slate in general for today. So that's kind of the agenda. So in terms of yesterday's picks, I had Max Scherzer at the pitcher position, $9,600. Got the 32 points to give him a push yesterday. 5 2/3 innings, gave up 11 hits and 5 earned runs. So he was actually cruising pretty well throughout the start. Had like 8 strikeouts in the first 10 outs of the game. Was pitching really well. Gave up some runs and some hits, unfortunately, as the game went along, though. 10 strikeouts in total. Was the 6th overall pitcher. So not anybody that completely killed you at the same time, but definitely was looking for closer to 40 points out of it. Then at first base, initially we had Anthony Rizzo. That game was postponed due to the air quality in New York. So went to Christian Walker at $3,100. Got to 6 points, so to give him a push. Not anybody that really helped our lineup, but not anybody hurt it at the same time. Then at second base, we had his teammate in Ketel Marte, $3,300. Got to 21.4 points. He was a hit in the 3rd overall second baseman on yesterday's slate. At shortstop, went with Ellie De La Cruz. You could play him at third base as well. $2,800, got to 34.4 points. He was a hit. He was the top overall third baseman and top overall shortstop on yesterday's slate. You know, he was drawing about 30% ownership depending on the type of contest you played in. I know one of the people that was checking out the video yesterday, I think it was Ryan, said that he'd be pretty chalky. I did think he have a decent amount of ownership, probably right around that 30%. So I wasn't too afraid of that overall. Did end up paying off yesterday. And then at outfield, initially I had Hunter Renfroe here. Unfortunately, he went on the paternity list. Unfortunately for us playing DFS, I should say, but he is having the birth of his child. Not sure if it's a boy or a girl. Apparently, I did not know that going into yesterday, so I said switch over to Shohei Ohtani. He was, what was it? $3,800, got to 21 points. He was a hit in the 9th overall outfielder on yesterday's slate. So pretty good day yesterday. You know, we had 3 hits, 2 pushes. So if you went with this, had some other decent plays alongside there, you had a chance of cashing on yesterday's slate. But with that being said, I'm going to stop talking about the recap of yesterday. We're going to go over to weather for today. Doesn't look like anything major at this point in time. We'll check out that air quality for the Phillies game. Since it was postponed, I believe, yesterday. There is a chance that happens again today, which would make this down to a 4-game slate. But if that game goes off, going to be a pretty good Phillies stack looking today. But with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. We're going to go over to my cheat sheet for today over on the YouTube community tab. Like I said, a little bit different than our standard day where we go over to FanDuel and talk about core picks right away. But since it's smaller slate is a 5-game slate, might end up being a 4-game slate if that Philadelphia and Detroit game kind of goes away. But the smaller slates, I've been liking to talk a little bit more in totality. So go over my cheat sheet just a little bit. So this is what I do have in general for today. So top pitcher that I do have is Zach Wheeler against Detroit. He's been pretty hit or miss, though. He had a rough start versus Washington last time out. So there is some pretty high upside there. There's a little bit of risk to be had. As terms of other high-end pitchers, we got Framber Valdez, we got Spencer Strider, $11,100 for Valdez, $11,400 for Strider. Strider's probably going to be pretty popular, but he has not pitched that well against the Mets in his career, so there's a little bit of concern to be had there. And then Valdez, a little bit hit or miss against Toronto as well. Excuse me. And then we move over to kind of the mid-range guy that I do have today is Justin Verlander. You know, it's been a little bit of hit or miss year for him going against Atlanta. Not the easiest matchup in the world, but you know, not a bad price tag there whatsoever. And then Jose Barrios, who's pitched pretty well his last 4 starts, but doesn't have the best history against Houston. A couple other options out there in the pitcher, which we'll talk about a little bit later. First base slash catcher today, just in general. Bryce Harper, I do like quite a bit. Going against Detroit today, it is, I believe Tyler Holton is the kid's name. He pitched a couple days ago. He's mainly been a reliever at the big league level. Probably not going to pitch too far in this game. Essentially a bullpen game overall for the Tigers. So that is something that's pretty interesting there. I like stacking some of these Philly bats. So we're good. Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto is there as well at $2,800. And then Josh Bell, I like at $2,600, starting to hit the ball a little bit better going against Boston. And I cannot remember the guy's name, but he's mainly been a relief pitcher. He's 32 years old, making his first MLB start, and wasn't that great in the minors either. So definitely do like some of those Cleveland bats today. That will be one of the top stacks. Josh Bell fits alongside there. Jose Altuve has decent history versus Jose Barrios if you want to go there as a pay up option at second base. Brandon Drury has good history in the past versus Drew Smiley, $3,000, hitting the ball pretty decent as of late. And then Luis Rengifo, he's coming off a pretty strong game yesterday. You can play him on multiple positions. I believe second base, second base, shortstop, and outfield. Decent value against Drew Smiley as well. At shortstop, we got Bo Bichette, who has decent history versus Framber Valdez, excuse me. $3,600 definitely in play there. Trey Turner obviously is going to be pretty popular if that game goes off at $3,000 versus Detroit. And then Ahmed Rosario, kind of a sneaky play today, probably hitting in that 2-hole once again for Cleveland, going against that Boston pitcher whose name escapes me at this point in time. But, primarily been a relief pitcher, so could be a pretty good game for him as well. At third base, Rafael Devers versus Aaron Ciavalde. That's who's pitching for Cleveland. He's another guy that could be kind of in play today at pitcher. He's been decent so far. He's only pitched 3 starts. Probably not getting a quality start out of him, though, but he's $8,200. But Boston's a team that you could maybe attack on the other end. $3,600 for Rafael Devers, 1 for 2 for Ciavalde in his career. Jose Ramirez never faced the Boston pitcher as well, but $3,300, good price tag for him. And then Drew Ellis at $2,000, the flat minimum. Been really up or down. They had the first couple starts with Philadelphia that looked pretty good. Last 2 games, 0 for 7. So a little bit of risk there, but should hit left-handed pitching a little bit better. When we get down to the outfield, Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, both definitely in play versus Drew Smiley. Trout has 2 home runs versus him in his career. Kyle Tucker, I believe 3 for 6 with a home run versus Jose Barrios in his career, so looks pretty good there. Nick Castellanos versus left-handed pitching in Detroit. A little bit of a revenge spot there if you want to go with that kind of card, which I don't really typically care too much about, but definitely in play once again. $3,400 as well. And then Taylor Ward against left-handed pitching, typically it's them pretty well. Going against Drew Smiley, $2,900. And then Trey Mancini, 2 for 7 in his career versus Reed Detmers at $2,500. You could play him at first base or outfield. So that's kind of what I do have in terms of the cheat sheet for today. Like I said, going to talk a little bit more about the slate in depth field. Sorry, I was going to say that I felt a sneeze coming on, but ended up sneezing before that time came about. So for the top stacks that I do have for today, we have Cleveland Guardians, not the greatest offense in the world, but going against Boston Red Sox, essentially a bullpen game, or a 32-year-old starter making his very first start of his major league career. Primarily been a reliever before that. The Angels going against Drew Smiley looks pretty good there, whether it's Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, Taylor Ward, Luis Rengifo, Brandon Drury, a lot of different options that we can attack from that team overall. And then the Philadelphia Phillies going against, I believe, Tyler Holton, who is pitching for them, most likely a bullpen game for that Detroit team. And Detroit does not have the greatest bullpen in the world. So those are kind of the 3 main ones that I do like for today. If you want to mix and match some other ones in there as well, as kind of contrarian plays, one-offs, anything else like that, does definitely make some sense today. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen. We'll go over to FanDuel, talk a little bit more about the slate in depth, if anything else we would need to highlight in terms of guys that did not make the cheat sheet. So going to scroll down here. We're just going to click on a contest to get started at this point in time. So they did add Joe Adell to the player pool. I'm not sure if he did anything yesterday. Was hitting pretty well in AAA, but never hit major league pitching. So like I said, Spencer Strider versus the Mets has had some struggles there. Valdez has been pretty hit or miss versus Toronto on the pass. Zach Wheeler, it's been an up and down season for him, but Detroit, there is a lot of upside to be had there. Keep moving down. Verlander been an up and down season, but Atlanta's a tough matchup. Got some decent history versus them, though, at $9,400 makes some sense. Like I said, Barrios, last 4 starts have been really good. Very hit or miss history versus Houston in the past, though. Aaron Ciavalde, 4th start of the year, 2nd start off the IL. Probably not getting that quality start out of him. If he was under 8K, be a little bit more interesting to me. But some upside to be had there versus Boston. Drew Smiley, probably not getting to myself personally. I like the Angel stack quite a bit, $7,500. Reed Detmers, if I'm getting anybody like way, way down here, might be Reed Detmers at $7,100. A little bit of hit or miss there, but could be some high-end upside versus the Cubs if he's able to get some strikeouts. And then Tyler Holton, mainly just an opener today. Not really too interested in him at this point in time. If anybody does have additional questions while I'm kind of going through this, feel free to drop them in the comments. Be sure to let me know your favorite play on today's slate as well. But that's kind of pitchers in a nutshell. We'll go over to catcher slash first baseman. Matt Olson, if you want to go that direction versus Verlander, probably not getting there. Alonso's dealing with a little bit of wrist injury. Not really too interested in this Braves team today. Maybe if the ownership's down, then you can get there as a contrarian play. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., if you want to go there against Framber Valdez, you can do it. He's a little bit underpriced at $3,600. Josh Naylor versus Boston does make a little bit of sense. It's a lefty on lefty matchup, though. So that's probably somebody I'm not getting to personally in my Cleveland stack when I'm stacking Cleveland. But if you want to mix and match them in there, some does make some sense. Brandon Drury, like I highlighted in the cheat sheet, is going to look pretty good today. Justin Turner, mainly, if you like him against Ciavali, it's just a way to get different. Probably playing him at third base if we're doing that, though. And then keep moving down. Spencer Torkelson would just be a contrarian play at $2,800. Connor Wong maybe is a contrarian play, but probably not getting there myself personally. Yan Gomes does have a home run versus Reed Detmers in his career, so that is somebody that we could get to. Probably somebody that would be better more like on a DraftKings platform, though. Let's see. As we keep moving down, probably not getting to Tristan Casas. Trey Mancini, we already talked about. Alejandro Kirk just really hasn't hit so far this year. Eric Haase really not getting to. Jose Abreu does have decent history versus Jose Barrios, but Abreu has just been so rough this year. If you really want to go down there in an Astro stack, you could do that. Vogelbach is all right for Strider. I mean, like I said, Strider has not done the best against the Mets. If Vogelbach starts, he could be a cheap option there. Let's see. Somehow I missed Brandon Belt there. They don't have him projected to start today. It is lefty on lefty matchup, but he's been hitting the ball pretty well. So if he does end up starting, he could be a sneaky play as a cheaper option as well. Not really sure there's anybody else down here at this point in time. We're not playing Martin Maldonado. Maybe if you really want to take a shot on Chad Wallach, you could do it at catcher if he ends up starting for the Angels today. Let's see. Second base, like I said, Altuve's at the top. He's got decent history versus Barrios. Nico Horner is too overpriced for me at this point in time for $3,500. There could be a little bit of upside there, but it's just the price range I'm not too comfortable with. Like I said, Brandon Drury, pretty good history versus Drew Smiley today. Whit Merrifield actually has decent history versus Framber Valdez, 5 for 10 with the home run. Just did not make my cheat sheet. There's a lot of guys in that second base and outfield spot where he would have fit in. So that is somebody else to note. Not really getting to too much Atlanta today. Like I said, if you want to throw Ozzy Albies in there, you could. Bryson Stott, maybe against Detroit. If he hits the leadoff spot, he'd be a lot more interesting, but they haven't projected in the 6 hole at this point in time. Jeff McNeil does have decent history versus Spencer Strider, so if you want to throw him in at second base or outfield, you could do that. As we keep moving down, Kiki Hernandez, if you want to take a shot there just with the multi-positional eligibility, you can do that. Andres Jimenez, if you want to throw him in that Cleveland stack against Boston, does make a little bit of sense there, but hasn't been hitting the ball too well as of late. Keep moving down. Kevon Biggio does have, I believe, a home run versus Framber Valdez, 2 for 4 as well. So if he ends up starting, he could be in play, but probably not going to start in the lefty on lefty matchup. Not too much else here to say from second base perspective. If there's any other like specific players you guys have questions about, feel free to leave them in the chat as well. Third base, already talked about Rafael Devers, Jose Ramirez. If you want to get to Matt Chapman, lefty on righty matchup could be a little bit favorable for him. Austin Riley's been doing pretty well lately, so you could play him against Verlander. If you want to go Bregman against Barrios, there is some history there. Patrick Wisdom against the lefty does have that upside. Christopher Morel really cooled off lately, but if you think he has a decent day against Detmers, you could make a case for that. Like the Cubs wouldn't be the worst team to stack against Detmers. Detmers still does have an ERA over 5. So if you want to stack like a Patrick Wisdom, a Dansby Swanson, Christopher Morel, Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, guys like that, Trey Mancini in there is ways to go about that. Anthony Rendon, $2,900. Have some questions about his upside, and he got pulled the first game that he was back for defensive replacement, so you could be losing a bat here and there as well. Not too interested in Arcia, not too interested in Beatty. Manuel Valdez is like a maybe, but he really hasn't hit too much lately. Let's see who else is down here. Nobody, not too much else in terms of third base at this point. Really just Drew Ellis at the very, very bottom at $2,000, which would be interesting to see what his ownership looks like today, assuming that he is starting once again. So we're going to keep going. We're going over to shortstop. Like I said, Bo Bichette definitely in play. Lindor was decent history versus Strider. So like the Mets are the sneaky snack, especially against Strider today. We'll see what their ownership comes in like. Like I said, you could play Swanson versus Detmers if you want to build that Cub stack out. Trey Turner, I expect to be very popular. Probably not getting to Jeremy Pena. Probably not getting to Arcia Baez. Kiki Hernandez a little bit here and there. Zach Nieto, if you want to put him in some of these Angel stacks, you could do it, but he's been a little bit slower as of late. Ahmed Rosario is probably my favorite at $2,500 in terms of pay down in that 2-hole. Going against Boston, that bullpen or 32-year-old first-time starter, there is upside to be had there. Not too much else here from this position. I mean, if Kessinger ends up starting again for Houston, he could be like a sneaky play at the flat minimum of $2,000. But that's kind of where we're at in terms of shortstop. Moving over to outfield, we'll look there real quick before we get out of here. So Ronald Acuna, he's always kind of in play, but against Verlander, I'm not trusting it too much myself. Jordan Alvarez, if you want to go there against Jose Barrios, does make some sense. Like I said, Ohtani and Trout playing probably a decent amount of, especially in those Angel stacks. Even if it was one of today, Yoshida probably not getting to, but there is some upside to be had there. I like the Phillies guys, obviously. Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, if you want to play Schwarber out there as well. Kyle Tucker does have decent history versus Barrios, so it's kind of what wins out, whether it's Barrios's good recent history or whether it's Kyle Tucker's past history versus him. Different ways that we could go about that. Springer probably not getting too much today, and Nemo probably not getting too much today. Like I said, Schwarber, you can throw in some of those Philly stacks. Wisdom, you could play if you're playing some Cubs stacks, maybe even as a one-off. I talked about most of these guys already. Say Suzuki would just be in a Cubs stack. Marte would maybe in a Mets stack, but probably not getting there. Canada does have okay history versus Strider, so that is something to note as we move along. But $2,900, a little bit more than I like to pay for him. Ian Happ would just be in that Cubs stack. Taylor Ward is a one-of or in some Angel stacks. Does make some pretty good sense against the left-handed pitcher. Let's see. As we move down here, not too interested in Varsho or Ozuna. Duran is 2 for 2 in his career versus Giovanni. So if you're building out some Boston stacks, could make some sense to throw him in there. He's been all right this year. He's been better than he has been in the past. Steven Kwan, if he leads off today for Cleveland, could be a little bit interesting in terms of runs scored, maybe a couple stolen bases. Eddie Rosario has been hitting the ball pretty well as of late, but versus Verlander, probably not getting too much interest there. Brandon Marsh, lefty on lefty, not too interested. McNeil would have some interest in. Let's see what else we got down here. In terms of Houston, Jolks and Myers probably not getting to. Jolks would be the more likely one if we're talking from that perspective. Trey Mancini and some Cub stacks, maybe even as a one-off you could throw in there. Rengifio, we already talked about quite a bit. Joe Adell, if he starts at $2,500, there is some upside there. Speed power combo, but lefty or righty on lefty matchup could actually be all right for him, honestly. Let's see, as we keep talking, Miles Straw, if you want to throw him in there in a Cleveland stack, you could do that. Not too much else as we move down here. I need to look for Chas McCormick, though, because he does have good history versus Barrios in the past. He's $2,900. They don't have him projected to start at this point in time, but he could be all right if you're building out kind of a Houston stack as well. But that's kind of where I'm at this point in time. Hopefully you guys found this video pretty useful, pretty informative. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below. Be sure to let me know your favorite play on today's slate. If you have any additional questions, feel free to leave it down there and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. I'll also try to get as many starting lineups out today as possible. And then if anything does change weather-wise or with that air quality thing, especially on the East Coast, Northeast Coast, I should at least say, we'll list that down there below as well. But with that being said, that's really all that I do have for today's video. Do appreciate everyone checking it out. If you're checking it out for the very first time, you enjoy the content that I am putting out, please do subscribe and definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS, mainly MLB DFS as well as USFL DFS at this point in time. USFL DFS video will be coming out tomorrow. If you are a subscriber if you are a new or current subscriber who's yet to do so, also be sure to hit that notification bell down below. It's going to let you know every single time that I do go live for these live streams, post up a pre-recorded video or anything else like that. But with that being said, that's pretty much what I do have at this point in time. If you are very new to Parlay Play, be sure to check it out. Use referral code Coach Craig, all one word, and you'll get 100% first match deposit up to $100. Helps you out a little bit, helps me out a little bit over there as well. Great site for betting on, similar to Prize Picks if you guys are familiar with that as well. But with that being said, that's really all that I do have at this point in time. Definitely appreciate everyone tuning in, whether you're watching live or on replay. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS tonight.